I am so excited to talk to you today about the grifter economy and how this world of lying has made our lives substantially worse. And in this live stream, I'm going to talk about Peter Attia. I'm going to talk about Brian Johnson. I'm going to talk about the Maha institution that has basically built on corruption, and then how you can spot bad actors. I'm also going to spend a lot of time talking about the news sources that I rely on and look at every day, even on how I correct for bias in those news sources. However, before I get into it, I just need to tell you that this part that I'm recording right now actually is after I have finished that live stream, because people were telling me that the live stream had some sound issues, and I can't correct sound issues while I'm talking, because then people are just going to see me fiddling with my computer. So now I fixed it in post, and now we're going to go into the show, and it should sound pretty good. So the first thing I want to say is that the reason why I'm doing a live stream today, there's two. First is that I have this enormous investigation that I've been working on for like 2 months. And I just finished the first part yesterday. Finished all the little doodads, and I'm going to put it out on my Substack on Thursday, and then it'll be out as normal on Tuesday. But it's been a lot of work, and I didn't have anything lined up for today. So now we're talking. But the other reason is that last time I launched a compilation of videos where I was going over all of my grifter videos I've done over the years, and in it I said, if we raised, I think, $55, that's almost like 2 breakfasts out, that I would do a live stream. So, and the biggest contributor was a woman named, her call sign was Horse for You. She contributed, I think, $50. That was awesome. Thanks, Horse for You. Okay, so and the theme of today, it's going to be loose. It's going to be a loose theme, but it's how to survive the grifting economy, because I go out and I expose grifters. I look at the powerful, prominent people in society, particularly in the wellness space, but I've also sort of dabbled in politics recently. The people who lie for profit. I've defined the grifting as the monetization of lying, and that seems to be holding up over the things I do. And I hate liars. I have an emotional reaction to people who lie, probably some sort of deep-seated childhood trauma there. And that when I can go out and I can prove someone is lying, I like that. And it seems to me that a lot of people here on this channel have liked that too. Because this channel is like, from 3 years ago, I had 1,000 followers, and now I have like well over 200,000 followers. So thank you to everyone who has been here over the years, especially Horse for You, who is now in the chat. My patron of the arts. Okay, so I would love you guys to put questions that you want me to address down in the comments, but I had actually already posted on my post section, the notes section of YouTube, with some questions, and there were 2 that I really wanted to get to, and it's probably going to take me 15-20 minutes to get through them first, and then we're going to go into like all the user-y, fun, live streamy stuff that we do. So the first question is how to spot a grifter, right? And this is something that in some ways you can just feel it. Like, maybe I have a spidey sense for lies, but I think that all of us have met liars over in our lives. And usually when you find out someone is a liar, you have an emotional, visceral reaction, a sense of betrayal. And if you can hold on to that sense of betrayal, you can, that is in some ways a guiding light for me, as I can sort of sniff them out at sort of a supernatural sense based on my prior emotional reactions. And I think, I've gone in my life seesawing between being very open to new ideas and then embracing those ideas and then being betrayed by the person who gave me new ideas. The most obvious example is, of course, my book, What Doesn't Kill Us. It's on my shelf. It's on my shelf, yeah. New York Times best-selling book. I embraced Wim Hof because I tried his cold method, I tried his breath work, and my life changed because the cold and breath did stuff that was really cool. And I still stand by the cold and breathy stuff. I actually did it this morning. However, sometimes the people you embrace then can go on their own paths. And even if there's a kernel of truth, and in fact, the best liars in the world have a kernel of truth to them, sometimes that kernel of truth can become enraptured by the profit motive and the adulation that people get when they are grifting and being very successful at grifting. To some degree, I think that fame is a mental illness. When somebody gets very, very famous, you get all of this information coming in from the outside world that makes you and reinforces your sense of rightness and correctness and virtue and those things. And that without peers in the world, you can sort of go off the rails. So how do I detect a grifter? People send me messages all the time. Hey, have you looked at this guy? Or have you looked at this guy? Here's the insulin lady. Here's the meat diet guy. And they send me like, here's a martial arts person who's doing weird stuff. And I get sort of like a constant roll of people who are doing bad things, supposedly. And I don't go after them. I really am trying to go after the people at the very top of that grifting pyramid because I guess you got to start somewhere. And if I go after some sort of low-level grifter that only like the 500 people have heard of, one, it's not going to resonate with the audience, but also they're doing less damage than the really big people. So I think when you're seeing someone on the internet talking to you, the first thing you got to ask is, what is the coherence of their of what they're saying? Like when they're talking about something, does it make sense within their own language of what they're saying? Are they just directly contradicting themselves with every other statement? If that's happening, then they can't even maintain an illusion of truth to themselves, and that is an obvious red flag. It's not even, when you're saying something, you're contradicting, you're saying things like the earth is flat, right? Those people sometimes have internal coherence. They have an idea of why the earth is flat, but if you talk to them long enough, they start to contradict themselves. Contradictions are an indication of a lie. Not always, though. Sometimes you can contradict yourself, just make errors, but it's a good sign that something is going wrong. Another one is obviously the profit motive. If someone tells you they have a discount code for a supplement that they're selling, we already know supplements are sort of grifty, you should already put a red flag up. It's not to say that people can't make money online. I mean, we have a big monetization problem on the internet. I am on YouTube. I am getting YouTube ads and stuff. I've taken my first sponsor recently. It's not ready for prime time, but eventually I'm going to sponsor this product on this channel. It's a razor blade. I figure I don't do much about razor blades, so how grifty can it be? And I shave my neck a lot, so I don't know. I will sponsor that. I don't think that the nature of capitalism implies that you have to be a liar. Maybe capitalism is already a problem no matter what we do, and it corrupts everything, but we're all in that system together and we're trying to make our best. But if I was going to sponsor for you a wellness supplement, maybe you should look at me a little bit more askance. Like if it's in my direct wheelhouse, and I'm offering you something that might sound too good to be true, that's another indication that someone is a grifter. And that too good to be trueness, for instance, let's look at Mark Hyman or Brian Johnson, for instance. If they tell you that you can reverse your biological age and get younger, that has been a grift that's been going on since time immemorial, since the beginning of grifting. It goes all the way back to actually the age of Gilgamesh. We're talking 5,000 years ago. It was the first written book by a human. Which is also the first written book. The whole plot of that was you can go back and you can raise someone from the dead and live forever. It didn't work for Gilgamesh or his buddy Enkidu, but this desire to live forever, to reverse to get a fountain of youth. It's such a classic grift. You pretty much know, but if someone's talking about it, they got something wrong. And now the current iteration of it is, of course, we have science and we have these studies and we have this idea that we've redefined what age means to biological age, which means biomarkers, and we can reverse your biomarkers, and they have a whole logic for how it works. In my mind, it's usually a bait and switch. Even if there is some coherence to an idea of biological age, so for instance, a dog lives 14 years. You could say the dog ages faster than a human who lives like 74 to 84 years on average. The dog is aging faster. Does that mean that we could? So what does that mean? What does it mean that something is aging faster or slower? We see these mouse studies that David Sinclair has done that suggest that he can make a mouse live 5 years and still run on a treadmill really well. Some of that stuff looks good, but the science, honestly, it's not there. You actually can't tell if someone actually makes you a supplement or one thing makes someone live longer unless you do a controlled experiment, which probably means putting someone in a bubble for a long time and controlling for all variables that go into it. Otherwise, what we've had in the last 100 years of human history is that we have been living longer. We have, because of public health improvements, because of better water, better food supply, fewer diseases on us. And that has been the longevity reality of the world that we live in. So sometimes these people take credit for things that aren't really theirs to take credit for, and they always put the cart before the horse. They have the idea of longevity, and we're going to give it to you, and they sell you on that idea that we all want, and they say they have the solution when we honestly don't have the science. Maybe we could have the science in 100 years or something, but we don't have it now. And they're using the same language they've always used. So is it too good to be true? The other one is, of course, appeals to emotions. If they're saying, and this is related to too good to be true, if they're saying something on the internet that hits an emotional note for you, you may take a jump on a product or a training course or a program because it's designed to hit an insecurity that you have. For instance, let's say you were let's say you're struggling with alcohol. Substance abuse, right? And it wrecks your body. It makes you, feel ashamed of being addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs. There are people who will then tell you they'll take like Instagram ads and they will target something. Be like, well, we're going to target people who've been Googling about substance abuse issues, and then they will say, we have the solution to substance abuse issues, and we're going to give you another drug. For instance, I'm sort of paraphrasing the prophet. I'm paraphrasing the methods of this Feel Free bottle. This idea that you can take this thing and it will undo your cravings for alcohol. Instead, you'll get addicted to this. And there's a whole business model around that. And it's because it hits something that you were looking for. So it hits your personal emotions. And then because of the magic of the internet and targeted marketing, they can hit your insecurities. This works for weight loss. It works for libido, works for your money worries, all the things that we have, and whatever it is that you might have an issue with, there are ways for them to target that for you. So, yeah. That's how grifters are out there, and if they're doing this to you, then you should squint your eyes and like, are these good people? But one major problem is that we have an authority issue around the world, but especially in America right now. There was a time when you could say, look, I just want somebody who's like a reliable source for health information, for news information, for stuff that just is just plain boring, reliable information, and I will live my life according to that. And I don't want to think too hard about it. And there have always been problems with the media, obviously. There have always been problems with the government. But we have a situation now where the grifters, the people with histories of fraud and scam and criminal records, are now in authority. They are the president and his grifty administration. I did a whole video called the Griftoverse or something. Go watch that, and you'll see that these people have like decades of scam criminal convictions. They're leading the government, and now they are the authority. So there was a time, I trusted Fauci. I thought Fauci and his vaccine science was better than anyone else's understanding, especially at that time in COVID. Not to say he did everything perfect, but he was, he had the hardest job in the world. He was looking at the data that was out there and he was trying to give rational explanations. He didn't get everything right, but he got a lot right, and the vaccine did save lives. But at the same time, there was this whole media ecosystem saying, no, you can't trust vaccines because vaccines make us ill. The jab is going to mess us up. And those people who were the big pharma folks, and I'm not saying I'm pro big pharma, be very clear. I've written books about why big pharma is a horrible place, but that sort of like sentiment that took over, and now we have the whole FDA is now being run by the anti-FDA people. And that's a problem because the FDA, while it has had huge conflicts of interest and real problems with it, the ideal of a controlled clinical trial and experimental data that was validated over many large population studies was a standard for clinical trials. And that seems to be undone. And instead, we've replaced it with a vibe, which is so much worse than even corruption, because a vibe is just your emotional feelings about something. I don't feel like vaccines make me feel better and that it protect me from polio, because honestly, if you get a vaccine, usually you feel terrible the next day, so there's a good reason, sensory reason why you might not feel good. And then these people who are selling you on a vibe are now in charge of the authority of medicine in America. And I don't know where that goes, because we have a general lack of trust in institutions where 20 years ago, we've been like, they're doing a pretty decent job. And this also goes for news sources, right? This also goes, oh no, my audio is really bad. Someone's saying my audio is really bad. What do we trust now, right? Where can we trust? And I think that when I look at statements coming out of the FDA, I don't want to look at any scientific paper that was sponsored by the FDA that came out during Trump and RFK's reign of the FDA. So it sort of means that I have to look at science that was pre-2004, published pre-2004. And I don't know where this goes, because eventually I still want new science, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to vet that. And I haven't figured that out. I don't know if other people will fix this. I'm sorry that the audio is not good. But I am recording separately, and I will modify the audio in post, and maybe I'll repost this not as a live, but as a non-live shortly later today, if we're getting audio, because I am recording on a secondary setup. Might be a Starlink issue. Okay, so what things do I trust, right? What news sources do I trust? And I've put together a list of people that I like here in the mainstream media, and I was a reporter for mainstream news sources for many years, probably 20 years, working for Wired, working for NPR, Men's Journal, Playboy, Mother Jones, all sorts of different news sources. And I have a respect for the effort that reporters do and the intentions of reporters that are going into the field, because we didn't go into this to make money, right? We like making a living, but we didn't do this to make money. Usually we were those kids in college who were sniffing our noses at the poli-sci majors and the economist majors, and we want to make a difference in the world. And I went into journalism to make a difference in the world. And even though there are problems with the mainstream media, these are the sources that I go to regularly. And I want to talk just a little bit about that. And I've put a list below in the description of this video, where you can follow along and you can pick and choose whatever ones you want to look at that I am giving my tentative certification. First and foremost, the NEWSWIRES. Now, the NEWSWIRES are great because they have reporters who live all over the world, and they go report on stuff, whether they're going to a press conference or they're going to do their own investigation. These are they abide by the AP style guide rules, And generally, I think Reuters has its own news guides, and they're generally very boring because there's not much editorializing. It's sort of like just the facts. The Associated Press, I look at it every morning, and you should too, because it's dry, and they cover a broad variety of things. And the same with Reuters. Reuters is another one. They're a little bit more financial based, but these are two boring news sources that are bang standard. And I think that you can just generally trust them. Doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. Okay, next. Newspapers. Newspapers have taken a huge hit. There was a time when they made a lot of money, which meant they could hire fact checkers, and they had a legal review, they had a whole bevy of editors, and they were pretty decent. They have declined since about 2000, when Facebook and Google ate them up from the inside. They were giving their stuff away for free, and the newspaper, that news core has faltered. However, you still need daily news sources, and if I'm looking for something that puts a little bit more effort than the AP or Reuters, has a little more like a concierge news investigating team, the ones I look towards are the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and I know that they both have issues. I know that they have biases. I know the New York Times can be basically blamed for the second Gulf War, but you got to go somewhere for your reporting. And so I check the New York Times every day. I don't look at the editorial section in general, but I think they're sort of bang standard paper of record. They're okay. Squint a little bit. And the Wall Street Journal is actually a little bit more expensive to have a subscription to. I think they are maybe even a little better than the Times. But, choose one and just have it as your bang standard record. And you can, Washington Post used to be there for me. It actually used to be above the New York Times, but not anymore. They've lost all of their trust. So you need someone, I'm going to say New York Times, with that caveat that they're not perfect. Next, foreign places. My favorite foreign source is The Economist. It's a news magazine. I don't have one right here with me. It's a news magazine, comes out weekly. So they're a little slow. They're not right on top of the news as it happens, but they are they're biased. They're pretty biased. They're biased from the neoliberal standpoint, which means that they believe that no matter what, the free market will fix the problem. If we get investments right and free trade, the world will be a better place. They're generally techno-optimists. They believe that technology will solve the problems. And knowing that bias is there is actually really useful to read The Economist, because they're actually reporting a solid. You just know exactly what their slant is. And that's why I like The Economist. It's like $300 a year though, so not everyone can afford it. For me, it's a business expense, but I like that when I read it, I can immediately understand the bias so that I can correct for it in my own head. Okay, next ones, I'm just going to read these real quick. The Guardian, good British paper. They have a US edition. They're pretty decent. The BBC is good because, and also the CBC. We'll just lump them together because they're funded by tax dollars. So they're editorially independent of the governments, and they're pretty good. They have a global news force. BBC is bigger, obviously, than CBC, but they're good. They're generally good. They also have their issues. They've also have some recent scandals where they've made some stuff up, but you can't trust everything. You just have to read for it. I am going to read the comments, guys. I'm going to get there in a second. Everyone's just telling me that the audio's wrong. All right. Other ones, Al Jazeera. People hear Al Jazeera, they're like, oh, this is Arab news. This is Middle Eastern news. They're terrorists, right? They're not. They're not terrorists. They are biased in their own way, but Al Jazeera actually has a really good news core with billions of dollars of investment. And if you want a counterpoint to the American mainstream media, which is also biased, Al Jazeera is a really good one because they're really good, honest journalists who work for them. I know many Al Jazeera journalists, and I respect their ethics. You also know that they get targeted by every strike in the Middle East and like in Palestine. Right, their headquarters is like the number one target by Israel. That they got to be doing something right. So check out Al Jazeera. In India, I lived in India for 6 years. The Hindu and Tehelka. Hindu and Tehelka are two great ones. Hindu is like it's like the New York Times of India, you could say, sort of more conservative, but still like conservative in their in the way they write stories. They're good. They're a good Indian news source. And Tehelka is an investigative magazine based out of India. They do really good reporting, and so go check them out. They're sort of like the New Yorker of India. Magazines. I subscribe to Wired. I wrote for Wired for years. They're good, and actually their tech coverage has been stellar in the last year. So if you're just looking for a news source magazine featurey, really, really good. They're really good, like digging into AI, and I appreciate them. The Atlantic, New York Magazine, and the New Yorker, all solid publications. Read them I actually just subscribed to New York Magazine last week because I was like, there have just been so many features by them that have been like show up in my feed, and I hit that paywall. I'm like, I don't want to hit the paywall, and I subscribed to them last week. On TV and radio, there are no mainstream TV channels that I trust. Not CNN, not ABC, not Fox, not CNN, ABC, Fox. None of those. None of them. However, PBS is still doing a bang-up job, and National Public Radio. I have it on all the time. I know many, many reporters and editors at NPR. They have an edge because they own their terrestrial broadcasting network, and they're good. They're just good. And they also, people say they have a liberal bias. Having known how they work on the inside, they definitely do not. In fact, they shut down liberal voices all the time inside. Maybe the News Corps inside is generally liberal, but they really try to correct for it. I think they overcorrect for their liberal bias, actually. But they're good. They're good. Okay. People say Pacifica, KPFK. They're independent. The Pacifica is good, but they don't have quite the reach. They don't quite have the reporting reach as other places. Now, for newsletters, let's talk about Substacks. Every morning I read Heather Cox Richardson. She's a lefty historian, really good perspective on the world, and I really like her. She gets also a lot of stuff wrong. Sadly, when reading her, she has this idea that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, and I think that sort of informs everything she does, and I disagree with that idea, but I read her every day because she puts in the work, and she's great, and she's very, very popular. Nina Burley, good friend of the channel, like her stuff, Rolling Stone reporter, written many, many books. Go check her out on Substack. Webworm with David Ferrier, he's just a great documentary guy, like his stuff. Nini Munoz, very small channel, great health misinformation debunker. I think she's like an engineer out of California. Craig Unger, just had him on the channel. Looks at like Trump's corruption, the Epstein files. If you want to go down like a really cool, well investigated wormhole, Craig Unger, and then of course, Cory Doctorow, former editor of Boing Boing, techno journalist, fiction writer, just really good, high level intellectual stuff. Go read him. And in terms on YouTube channels I enjoy. Benn Jordan, great investigations. Hank Green, I check him every time he puts a video out. Coffeezilla, Joe Scott, DoctorMike, Quadzilla, and the Lever News team. You can just go subscribe to all those channels. They are down there. Okay. I'm so sorry, guys, that my audio is so bad. I don't know what to say about that because all the settings are right on this. But I will fix it in post. I will re-post this video with better audio afterwards because I'm recording it separately. Oh, man. People are saying they can only make out a little bit of what I'm saying. Okay, let's go to questions from people in the live stream. What is it that you want me to talk about the horrible griftiness of the world that we live in? Okay, I see one here. What are your thoughts on Jordan Peterson? Not the recent political stuff, but his early works, personality and stuff. What are your thoughts about his research? I'm going to tell you that What are your thoughts about Jordan Peterson? If I hit the mic in the wrong place, it makes it even lower. So that's not good for people. I am going to be honest, I'm not an expert on the entire collected works of Jordan Peterson. I have a video that I'm working on right now about him. Comes out next week, but it's not about his collected history. I feel like when he turned over into this sort of quasi-Christian, anti-woke intellectual that courted the right, he lost a lot of, if he had credibility before, he lost it around that time. I'm actually looking at his health prognostications and his own physical health. That's what my report is about. I just don't trust him. To be honest, but I haven't done a long exegesis reading all of his books and knowing his full scope of his mental understanding. I do feel like he feels like a pseudo-intellectual. When I see especially his most recent stuff, I think he leans into a vibe of an intellectual, but I do not feel like he is a real one. And notably in one video that I was looking at, he talks about going to the temple of Asclepius in Greece. Keep on touching that. He goes to the temple of Asclepius in Greece. He takes a nap with some snakes. And after taking a nap with snakes, he tells you that the entire American health system is wrong. That is not a methodology to tell you that the American health system is broken, that you slept with snakes in Greece. So I feel like there's a vibe that he puts out, and I don't think it's real. Okay. My next thing, and I actually don't want to give more information about Peterson. So I'm going to go to another question that was written to me in a previous post. How can people who never learn from their grift-related mistakes that were done intentionally be taught a proper lesson that leads to actual fruitful, true reform? This is really important. Basically, what this person is saying is that when you have a grifter, is there any path back into the light of non-grifting? I struggle with this, right? I struggle with this because, I've known a lot of grifters, and I've known them before they were grifters, right? I knew Andrew Huberman very early before he got in his channel, and I liked him. Wim Hof, obviously, and many other people. I wrote this book, The Enlightenment Trap, where I was talking to a spiritual Tibetan Buddhist, American Tibetan Buddhist, and I thought that a lot of what he said was good until people started dying. And how do you bring these people back into the light? We need to have an option to do that because these people have massive followings. A lot of people love what they do. They're already hooked in, and they have every incentive to keep going grifting. Just calling someone out doesn't instigate any change. So how do we do it? Well, the first step needs to come from them, right? It needs to come from, if they realize that they've been gone on the wrong path, the first step is to start issuing corrections, to go look at their own work and see where it was misled. And this is the hardest part. It's like when somebody who's an alcoholic realizes they're an alcoholic, the first thing they have to do is admit that they were an alcoholic. And that hurts. But if you don't do that, there's no coming back. But if you have someone who says, look, I was wrong. I mean, they don't need to go call themselves, I was a grifter, and now I'm fixing my griftingness. They can be like, look, I got engaged with this idea of fame, or, that I was taking all these pressures from society were telling me that I was doing everything right. They need, and I kept on doubling down, and they need to have some sort of mea culpa. That could destroy their whole credibility in the world. But if you don't have the ability to introspect, then you can't fix a problem that exists. So an apology is in order. And then from there, I'm okay with people admitting their mistakes and as an audience, we need to accept. You and I, the person who debunks grifters, need to be able to accept someone's apology and hold them to a straight and narrow path afterwards. I think there has to be that redemption. It's going to be hard for me should Andrew Huberman come out and be like, look, I got some stuff really wrong, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to do better. Like I would be obligated to give him a chance, and it's going to be hard for me to do that, but I will do that for these people, because if we don't offer them a path, if we don't offer them a path, then we're broken. God, everyone really, really hates my audio. I'm so sorry. It will be fixed in the post-production. Another thing that we need, though, if we're going to have grifters get fixed, we need to have some sort of peer system, right? We need to have some way to regulate someone as a grifter. Like it used to be, like newspapers were the conduit to get credibility. So the newspapers had editorial boards. And the editorial boards would sort of like call the balls and strikes, who was good, who was bad. And there were some problems with that, but it was the system. We need something like an editorial board of trusted people. And I don't know how we find those trusted people, because everyone's going to have an idea of who is trustworthy and who's not. But you need some sort of way in which to referee what is good and what is not. And we need to have some sort of way to downvote people who are grifters. And it's an interrelated problem, because obviously popularity and with the way social media works, attention is the economy that where you get credibility. And we need to actually get credibility back as the factor that pushes people. So there's going to be an algorithmic part of this. I don't believe that we should cancel people. I don't think we like shutting down someone's YouTube channel or whatever is the way to do it. I think that we need the algorithm to push quality content, which means working with Google and these people who have obviously ulterior motives to control the information of the world. So maybe there's a government regulation. Oh man, I don't even know, man. I don't even know. All right. I'm reading your comments here. Can you tell me what you think about Brian Johnson? Is he a grifter? He speaks about how to live a more healthy life. He's trying to sell things. Could it be warranted if there is a need? I think Brian Johnson is a through and through grifter, selling the idea of immortality and supplements and his own thing that personally benefits his bottom line. I think that he was bankrupt 2 years ago because he had overinvested in tech that wasn't useful, that didn't work out. He made all these bets on different companies. He ran out of money, and then he doubled down on his supplement grift and his celebrity, and I think he's on the rise now. The fact that he's charging people $1 million for his personal direction for longevity is just such an indication that he's a clown. He's a clown. So no, Brian Johnson is not real. He's not real. Are you able to tell us who isn't a grifter nowadays, who is worth watching? I gave you my list down below. Again, you look in the descriptions below. I said just some YouTube channels, for instance. I really like Benn Jordan. I really, really respect Hank Green, John Green's brother. Incidentally, John Green, I went to college with him. I knew John Green when he was like a 20-something. Hank Green is he really cares about reality and truth, and he perseverates on it, and I think he's really good. I also like Joe Scott, Coffeezilla, DoctorMike. If you're looking for health information in the popular, attractive doctor genre, DoctorMike is, I think, the best one right now. Go for him. And those, and then you can just see the other ones that I have down there. There's a lot of good people on the internet who are trying hard, and they don't always get things right. And I would say that in general, you do want people who issue corrections. Like you want people who, because we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. If you can admit your mistakes, you're someone who can be given second and third and fourth chances. If you never admit a mistake, and like an honest, a real mistake, then you are not acceptable. Is FIFA a respectable organization that stands for unity, or is it just pageantry? FIFA, I think you're talking about the football organization. I don't know. I mean, I know they obviously have some labor issues with how they built stadiums. I know that they're pandering to Donald Trump. They issued him a peace prize. So no, I don't think FIFA's really there for world peace. I think they're there for a lot of money. They're in it for the money. That is my feeling on FIFA. Other people could disagree. I am not an expert on FIFA or sports at all. God, there's so many quotes here. I'm just trying to read them. Just got here, Scott. Hey, and Grift Fighters. Peter Attia, has he apologized or is he still letting Barry Weiss throw money at him? Peter Attia. Okay, actually, we should talk about Peter Attia. For a while, he gave really decent medical advice on the internet through his microphone, and he gave very standard of care medicine, sort of like accessing your primary doctor. He would talk about how you should manage your blood pressure and not get diabetes and do things that were sort of reasonable and measured. And I actually thought that was good advice. Peter Attia has a medical degree. He went through training. He did not finish his surgical residency. After he dropped out of that residency, he went to work for a big consulting company. It was like Bain and Company or Goldman Sachs, or one of those really big consulting companies. And then from there, he learned that he could make a lot of money selling bang standard medical advice because our medical system is broken. Accessing medical care for like me, I don't know about you, maybe you have great insurance. I have crappy insurance. Accessing medical care is like pulling teeth for me. Getting normal medical advice is like pulling teeth. So people gravitated towards Peter Attia because he was giving decent, sort of normal medical advice. But he was also like a venture capitalist. And I think that we have to remember that his profit motive was huge. And he invested in companies that he was also promoting. Oura Ring, I did a whole video about Peter Attia and Oura Ring. Peter Attia was giving decent advice while also sort of affecting scientific outcomes. He would get involved in scientific papers to help promote his things. And of course, Epstein. He was a good friend of Epstein. He says he didn't know about the sex stuff, but he's sent Epstein like a lot of emails, like well over 1,000 emails. They met on multiple occasions. And I don't know if he participated in the sex parties or not. I wasn't there, but he certainly said some crude ass stuff. Has he apologized? No, but he did drop out of CBS when he was offered the griftiest position of being a health advisor on CBS. So he is out. I do know people who know Attia reasonably well, actually very well. And what I know from their secondhand through them, so you're getting this now third hand, he's a pretty big narcissist. He's a bit of an asshole in person. And he, is not a good guy. From the people I know who work closely with him, like very closely with him. I think he's done, man. I think anything with an Epstein taint right now is really, really bad. Like this is this is like the Me Too era of right now is the Epstein era. If you're in the Epstein files, you're basically canceled. And I think that he wasn't the worst of the worst, but I think he's done. And I think that's fine. I think we can now go look at other people. Go look at Dr. Mike. If you're looking for health advice, go to Dr. Mike and forget Attia. I don't think Dr. Mike is in the Epstein files because he's too young to be in the Epstein files. All right. Gotta see RFK interviewing Paul Saladino in the White House. Paul was allowed to product place his merch in the camera shot. They wrapped up the interview with a raw milk commercial. So Paul Saladino is the carnivore diet guy. Eat all meat. Eat meat all the time. And that's the way out of this. I find that really gross. Like I have known people who've gotten onto the carnivore diet and lost a lot of weight, and they've said they have more energy. They're in ketosis and stuff. I've met people who've had those experiences with it. I've tried sort of meat heavy. I did the Whole30 diet for a little bit. I just couldn't take it. I just couldn't take the constant meat. I feel like we have the meat culture is sort of a political animal right now, and I don't think that the world can sustain itself on meat. I don't think the planet can survive if we are eating just meat. We don't have the resources. We need, like, it's a very rich woman's, rich person's diet. And it is not sustainable for the planet. And I don't know how, I know people have lost weight on it, and they say they feel better. Long term, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. I certainly don't believe Saladino, who's also promoting raw milk, which is obviously very dangerous because raw milk comes out of a cow udder directly, and the cow udder is near the poop of the cow, right? Because the udder hangs below. Here's the cow. Here's the udder. Here's the ground, right? The cow udder is right there on the ground. So raw milk is unprocessed milk. It's right near there, and you drink it, and it is near the cow poop, and people get sick and they die of botulism and things like that. So pasteurization is really important. Pasteur invented it. The idea is you heat that milk up so the bacteria doesn't get there, so you don't die. And we know that lots of people have died from this over the years. So raw milk is obviously bullshit. If raw milk was guaranteed not to have pathogens in it, not through homogenization or pasteurization, maybe there could be some arguments that the pasteurization hurts some beneficial parts of it. But I think the trade-off to not having dangerous bacteria is definitely better. Okay. RFK went before Congress and suggested all Americans are wearables. Casey Means owns the wearable company. Okay, so Prester John, thank you for bringing this up. We have a corruption problem at the very heart of Maha. And Casey Means and Kaylee Means, her brother, own these companies that are for-profit, essentially wellness companies, who profit directly off of the alternative messages that are unvetted by FDA, at least prior to this. They run these companies that are directly profiting. Now, the partnership that Prester John was mentioning was with Oura Ring, which is a ring that I used to have one here. I used to wear it. I have an Oura Ring somewhere. And it tracks all your data, your health data, and theoretically that could be useful for getting healthier and stuff. The problem with the government tracking everything about you is that the government is tracking everything about you. It's not good. And I also think that the constant dataization of our health leads to improper health outcomes. Because if you're measuring everything all the time, this leads to sort of hypervigilance. It leads to you thinking that those numbers really mean something, but the devices only measure the things that they're able to measure. I know that sounds like redundant, but like a light on your finger can only measure so many things. And then they tell you that those things that it's measuring correlate with long-term health outcomes. And while in some cases they probably are right, like if you're measuring your heart rate, you know it's good to get your heart rate up sometimes. Like that's not bad. But if you look at every piece of data that it comes up with, the heart rate variability, which is actually, it's measured not well in an Oura Ring. You measure these things, you sort of become hypervigilant on the product that the Oura is selling you and the data that Oura is selling you. They say they have collected the right things, and that right data they're going to monetize not only by selling you the ring and the subscription to the ring, but also probably selling it to the government, to pharmaceutical companies, to anyone who can use that data, hopefully anonymized, but maybe not. For who knows what reason. I don't trust Oura Ring. I don't trust a government tracking program, and they're giving them out all around. Now, in terms of Casey Means, she's not a licensed doctor, right? She let her license lapse, and now she's the Surgeon General. That does not scream authority to me. That does not scream that we have an authority, we have a trustworthy government. That tells me that we have something that's corrupt, right? I want people who are in charge to be experts in the subject matters that they're in charge with, not the loyalty test to either RFK or to Trump himself. That doesn't seem to me to be credible. I want leaders who have pushback. Remember I mentioned that grifters should issue corrections. The way you find out that you made an error is usually other people telling you that you made an error. If we have a leader who does not want to be told that they make errors, we have a sort of this feedback cycle where you create a horrible situation for information and for trust in general. That's not good. All right, let's do another question here. And I'm really sorry about the audio. How to market a product ethically by J. Carnivore. This is a good question. We live in a capitalist society where we want people to buy the things that get created in order for people's lives to have jobs and for those products to answer a problem that needs to be solved. I feel like starting in the 30s, maybe in the 20s, we have marketing that marketed towards, moved away from needs, like I need a car to get to work, to I need a car because it makes me sexy, right? We changed it from the need, I need a car to get to work, to the car is a status symbol that makes me a better person in general. And that movement from needs to changing the self, it has been an effective way to sell a lot of cars, but it has transformed the whole idea of what a need is. And I think this is really the fundamental problem. We need products that people actually need. We want products that actually answer a demand that is not emotional, but for sort of a reality. This stuff makes me actually more productive. This thing actually saves my time. This thing actually lets me be more creative person because I can, paint. It's good. If you sell in paint, this makes red. Red is good, and you can use red for whatever you want. I think we need to get to a needs-based thing, less of a personal transformation on products. And I think that I've done videos on this. You can look at my Mel Robbins video, and the name is escaping me, but there's a film director who did a film called The Century of Self. I did a video on him. You can look up Century of Self on you just Google it into your YouTube bar. You'll watch this documentary. It's like 8 parts, and you'll understand how marketing has moved from where it was needs-based to emotions, and how that has been used for all sorts of propaganda. So I would highly suggest that why can't I remember that? The main character in Mad Men was based on him, and I can't remember his name offhand. All right, another person asked, did RFK change the nutrition guidelines to help out his dairy and beef buddies? I think in part, yes. I mean, you've seen in the FDA that the food guide, his advisors were in the dairy and meat lobbies. The people who helped literally write the new guidelines were the people who stood the most to gain from that. However, I also think that there's been a vibe on the internet from the Paul Saladinos of the world, from the meat-heavy people, that has been going on for like 10 years, where meat is the answer because those vegetarians are sort of NIMBY weak assholes, right? They don't like the vegetarians. They don't like the liberal plant eaters. And that this sort of counter proto-Maha movement really has started pushing meat as like sort of an identity change. And I think that RFK fit into that, and he liked he was part of the sort of that wellness bro thing, and that led him to accepting money from the meat lobby. And then that's how I think that all came together. I think it actually started out with sort of a more political vibe, and then became sort of a more explicit type of corruption. And I think a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of the types of corruption we're seeing in the American government actually started out as a vibe that we saw emerging in social media. And then it became opportunistic for people. All right. Raw milk is we have a raw milk question. All right. Here's from Life in Vibe. Wealthy people have the most opportunity to sell a lifestyle to the masses. Often they lack a moral compass, and it makes grifting second nature. There's a saying that show me a great fortune, and I will show you a great crime. And this is a guiding light for me, is that behind in capitalism, if somebody makes an outrageous fortune, they usually did not do it through completely honest means. And we have a fetishization in America of rugged individualism. We valorize wealth. We think that wealthy people are inherently good. This is sort of the Protestant work ethic and the spirit of capitalism. This is Max Weber. The idea that if they worked hard, they got rewards and they became good. And we have this idea that because someone is rich, they are also somehow favored I mean, if it's religious, it's favored by God themselves. So they have this sort of like this virtue by being wealthy. I think that, obviously, I don't believe that. I don't believe in the prosperity gospel. But we as Americans do, right? We look at the Kardashians. Well, the Kardashians are great because they're so wealthy. We look at Trump because he's great because he's so wealthy. We look at Elon Musk. He's great because he's so wealthy and so powerful. And we sort of look at people who are powerful and we say that because they're powerful, they're good. And then they also control the media oftentimes. They often like have PR people who can get stories put in the media that make them sound good. And I personally, though, don't think that the value of money, I don't think money makes good people. I mean, Jesus, incidentally, I'm not a Christian, but Jesus also pointed out that money does not make someone good. In fact, there's that line, a rich man is as likely to get into heaven as a camel going through the eye of a needle, which is actually sort of a mistranslation in the Bible. But nonetheless, rich people do not have a really good shot at getting into heaven because the fact of being rich usually stems from doing bad things. So that's what I feel. If someone is like ostentatiously wealthy, I really dislike it. And can I think of any rich people who are truly good people? I know a lot of rich people. Like when in my What Doesn't Kill Us days, I would hang out with a lot of wealthy people. They would be around in my orbit. And I would say that they try not to think about where their wealth comes from. They generally even think about themselves as middle class. I was talking to a very rich person like 4 months ago. And my statement was, I don't think that anyone should have more than $20 million. I think we should have a 99% tax above $20 million of net worth. And above that, you're just taxed to craziness. And then that's it. Because $20 million is enough to have anything you want in life, in my opinion. And they told me that $20 million doesn't go as far as you might think it was. And I realized how delusional that wealth becomes, because you're always comparing yourself to someone else. You're always comparing yourself to the private jet, the private yacht guy, and you're comparing your wealth to wealth. And when you compare your wealth to wealth, there's no limit because integers just can keep getting bigger and bigger. And you always can see someone who has more wealth. And the person at the very top, Elon Musk, just decides to start a space program because at some point, you just decide to do something even bigger. So there's no limit to the amount of greed that a person can have, and that we also have the ability to deceive ourselves. Now, on an interpersonal level, these rich people that I know, they're actually pretty nice folks. They're welcoming. They're usually pretty nice. They'll make you feel good, and you have a nice party with them. And like on an individual level, I feel like they're fine. But there is this corruption because of wealth that I think that a truly rich person cannot be a truly good person. Okay. All right. My audio has been terrible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video and see if I can fix all of the audio issues in post-production. And I've been here for an hour. So this has been fun. I've appreciated it. And next time I'll try to do a different way to connect on my live stream. Thank you everyone who has been here. And you know, keep on keeping on. I have a great video coming out next week. Early subscribers on Substack, you'll get it on Thursday. I'm just finishing up some last bits and pieces of it. And yeah, keep on keeping on. From Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates. Thanks. Bye, guys.